Hello, friends. Welcome back to My CIRS Story. Today, I want to talk about what healing looks like for me, for this body, for this spirit, for this brain part of this body. This topic came up just last weekend. I was talking with a new friend, and she had previously asked me what I do. You know, that question, what do you do? Meaning, like, what do you do for money? What's your job? Whatever. Um, and I had said to her, well, I do some things to try and earn some cash to survive, and I listed off those things. I said, and I'm really also trying to dedicate most of my full time work to healing. And so she said, oh, well, what does that look like? And I was like, huh, what does that look like? How do I make the intangible tangible? Um, and so I actually didn't write any notes. No, that's a lie. I wrote healing is nonlinear. That's the only thing I wrote on my notepad today, and I think that's the most important thing that I could say. Okay, period. Done. Video's done. Um, it has not been linear. I whether I'm focusing on healing my physical body or my emotional body or my spiritual body, I think as soon as I get attached to any sort of process around it or timeline, um, especially having to do with my physical body, as it seems like as soon as I get attached to that process, something comes in and disrupts it. And um, sometimes I feel like I'm backpedaling or I'm reverting back to old, symptoms in my physical body or old patterns or habits in my emotional body, in my spiritual body. Um, and I think that's ultimately part of the healing is a reminder that I don't have it all figured out. It's gonna be messy. It has been messy, and it doesn't need to be all bad. um, I'm trying to tap in and figure out what wants to come forward first here in terms of healing. Yeah, the first thing I can talk about is healing the physical body. And I realize I'm separating these things out, but they're all simultaneously happening. So I've talked about this in some of my other videos. One of the first things I have done to heal my physical body is to get myself out of moldy environments and get myself into less moldy environments. And there's some monitoring that goes along with that, and cleaning and diligence. To maintain this space. There's a lot of communication that I'm working on. So here's some overlap with the emotional healing, communicating with myself and with people I'm living with or interacting with about what I need, and to keep this environment safe. So that's been part of the healing is to be in less moldy environments. Get rid of the moldy things, like I've talked about in other videos. Clean with things that are not bleach, because bleach does not kill mold. Things I've already said before. Paying attention to what I'm putting into my body. So, taking the binders to bind the biotoxins, taking supplements to support my brain health and gut health, to keep brain health and gut health, among other things, and to keep my detox pathways open. I had a very particularly intense cupping session recently, but that's all part of the physical healing too, and energetic healing. So receiving acupuncture, cupping, gua sha, different modalities that my acupuncturist is using to help soothe nervous system, keep detox pathways open, all of those things. Physical body healing. I'm saying it out loud to see if there's anything else that's coming up around that. When I had access to bathtubs and Epsom salts, that was a great modality for me. Exercise, walking, dancing, moving my body when I can. Actually, these marks are so dark right now because I do have some stagnation in my blood when they're a little bit darker. This is just a lighter mark here, and they were done on the same day. So when it's darker, it just means there's more stagnation. The blood needs to be moving a little bit more, needs to get a little more oxygenated. Balancing my electrolytes. So drinking my water with Himalayan sea salt and electrolyte tablets and coconut water, things that are going to help so I'm not as dizzy. Sleep hygiene, getting proper sleep, wearing these glasses when I'm looking at blue light so I'm not as lightheaded and I don't have eye strain, I'm not as dizzy, and wearing these glasses before I go to bed at night so that the lights are not keeping me awake. Having somewhat of a structure around my bedtime routine, like doing some self-massage and touch, and this gets into like the emotional and energetic body as well, right? Like these are not separate entities. Having somewhat of a routine when I wake up in the morning, listening to my music right away, my meditation music, and I open up the blinds to let the lights in, to let my eyes see the light. I sit on my bed and I will sometimes stretch or sometimes just kind of lay back with my feet up in the air and listen. Sometimes I look out the window and I see birds or butterflies or, yes, bees. There's a bee that just flew by out the window. Thank you. Look at the desert willow outside, just kind of orienting to my surroundings. This feels like it's kind of naturally going into some of my emotional healing that I'm working on. Seeing so some like tangible practical things. I'm meeting with a somatic therapist weekly still. I'm as I said, meeting with my acupuncturist. I'm meeting with my old doctor back in Washington State. The videos here, doing more consulting and mind-body coaching work. Finding free classes from people or groups that I trust and that I've followed for a while on social media. There's one I took recently, just last week, about energetic boundaries, and so I think part of my emotional healing too is remembering that I'm an energetic body and an energetic being, and that my force field extends outside of my body even too, and yours does too. And we're often interacting in these subtle ways that we don't even realize. And just kind of coming back into awareness about that and about my internal world, and not like the organs and the blood and the guts and all of those really physical hard things, but just the energies and the emotions that move around and through this body that I live in. Journaling or writing is part of my healing process. Sharing it out with other people sometimes. These videos are part of my healing process. I mentioned boundaries, and boundaries feels like a really important part of that process right now. And what do I want to say about that? I think probably what my hand's doing right now, the having some flexible structure around boundaries, remembering that we can be humans that are too permeable and let everything in and just get the life zapped out of us, and we don't even know who we are because we can't put up any sort of walls. And then the other side of that being, which sometimes I tend towards after I've been really permeable, is putting up brick walls that no one, like not even me, not even I can get into. And so part of my healing there has been finding the balance of between shutting out and being super open to everything. And noticing if and when I'm in those places, sometimes I'm super permeable and not having shame around that. And also sometimes I freeze and I put up big, big walls and also not having shame around that. And noticing when shame does come up and being like, okay, I see you. And with any of the emotions that we often label as negative or the shadow emotions, they show us our darker pieces. They show us the places that the light can't always touch. And those emotions are real and valid, and that's all been part of my healing even before my CIRS diagnosis, was to honor those. And a particular challenge in my healing is that sometimes I get stuck in those, and I go real deep in them because I can, because I'm a shadow worker, and the light comes out of it, and sometimes I get stuck there. And so also noticing when I get stuck there and trying to figure out where's the light, how do I bring the light in. Oh, look, the sun is actually shining right now. I am here in this body, my feet are on the ground. Okay, grounding. Grounding helps. It's a big part of my healing too. Where else do I want to go? Being curious. Where else do I want to go? Being curious about my healing is actually a really big pillar, a really big part of it. I think it helps facilitate healing because then things don't get stuck as much. Like if I'm really, really angry for days and I'm feeling it and I'm in my body about it, if I can bring in curiosity about that and be like, well, what's this here for? Why? Why are you here, anger? What's up? What do you gotta tell me? It doesn't always happen like that. I'm really calm and grounded right now as I'm speaking on this video to you, and anger does not show up like that for me typically. Healing. Sometimes I jump timelines, like I do the, hey, where was I a year ago today? Where was I a month ago? Where was I a few months ago? What was I fearing? What was I expecting? What was I thinking? And so sometimes this is just I think about this, and sometimes I journal about it. I think if things start to get too, start to feel too up in the air, too, like I don't know, I don't have control over whatever, it helps to go back in time and be like, hey, almost a year ago today, I was living in who knows what kind of amounts of mold in a basement in a 100-year-old house in Seattle. This is real. Like, I'm telling you right now, this is real a year ago. And in a few days, I would take a test that told me that I had mold illness, and I would leave. And here, right now, I'm sitting in the desert on a mostly sunny day in a 5-year-old home that was deep cleaned a couple months ago and just deep cleaned again last week. My body is feeling pretty calm right now. I've been through so much treatment and healing, and I have an entire team of healers and doctors and practitioners and friends and love surrounding me. So it's just giving myself some perspective. Also self-talk. I think I've mentioned before that in therapy, I really dig internal family systems, and that's that like inner child work that people talk about, and like hydrating. Pause that thought for a second. Dirt. The inner child work that I talk about a lot, really looking at all of these different versions of me that make up who I am today and what they're needing, and maybe things they needed to hear when I was younger, that I can now tell to myself now. And sometimes that comes out in journaling, and sometimes it comes out in nervous system regulation, where I'm literally just holding my body and saying, I've got you. I've got you. It's okay. We're safe here. Your feelings are absolutely valid. You have every right to be angry. You have every right to be sad. You have every right to be grieving. Just those kind of phrases, and really just loving and giving my little babies the touch, the regulation, all of the things that they need or needed and maybe didn't receive. Part of the healing is going back and noticing patterns in, so there's like ancestral healing that's going on for me as well. Not just as a white person, but in my, my generation of humans that made up my particular family and bloodline, and looking at everything from emotional health to physical health, and some diseases that run in my family, like Alzheimer's, and how those are linked to the things I'm figuring out today, and patterns, noticing relationship patterns, um, noticing how that has rippled out into intimate partnerships or friendships or other relationships in my life, and figuring out when and how to do that work, and with what people it is safest to do that work. Healing. What does healing look like? What does healing look like? Creosote. Thank you. Can't believe this didn't come about until now. Healing sometimes looks like planting my feet in the ground. Not usually on the pavement or in the rocks out here in the desert, but when I can find patches of grass or dirt, putting my bare feet on the ground, getting outside when the weather allows, when it's not too humid, and touching things, touching the plants, noticing how many plants are actually soft in the desert and thorny and prickly, that they can be both. um, Rubbing creosote between my hands and getting that desert rain smell. feeding desert willow flowers to the tortoise that lives in the yard, reorienting myself, my body, to this landscape, to these weather patterns, to the humans that I'm surrounded by, um, looking at relationships in my life and deciding what I need now, right now, um, noticing that I'm wanting more calm and almost boring in my life right now. I'm wanting to call in calmer and more secure relationships. Um, mm, sound, healing, singing a lot more, moving, letting sound come out of my body has been healing. I did a sensual dance workshop, another free workshop, a couple days ago. And there was a moment where there were like hundreds of people on this call, and so you see all these little tiny faces on the screen. And the person who was facilitating, their name is JJ Luna, was just like let out your like like silly, like just be silly and let the noises out. And it was like, oh my gosh, it was so, yeah, Mimi. It felt really good to just be silly with a bunch of strangers and like let out noises that often get shamed out of us as adults. Like, why? um, did you like those sounds? Are you participating in releasing the sounds? Um, my cat's been getting a lot of co-regulation with my cats, kind of like right now. Just kind of deepening my relationship with those babes. Healing. What else does healing look like, Mimi? I'm just thinking about what foods I'm putting into my body, what things I'm putting on my body, what experiences I'm engaging in, and just having grace. Having grace that like the healing isn't always going to look like this. It's not going to look like calm centered dirt. Sometimes it's going to look like throwing things across the kitchen and yelling. And welcoming shame when shame comes, and seeing shame or embarrassment, jealousy, envy, any of those things that come up in the healing process. Just being with them. Noticing when the body goes into a freeze response or a fight response. You know that one, right, Means? Noticing when body's in rest. Are you coming up here? Part of the healing has been understanding what a no feels like. Especially as I'm meeting some new people out here in the desert. Like, what is my no? What is my yes? Within the last year, I've remembered, discovered what my yes feels like in my body. And that's cool too. Inviting pleasure in when I'm able to, not forcing it. You can't go from a completely flat, depressed being laying on the couch, can't get off of the couch, to like ecstatically dancing and giving a lot of self-love and self-touch. Like, it doesn't happen like that. And so being gentle as I'm moving in and out of different nervous system states. And when the roller coaster's going a little bit more like this, like just slowing it down until we kind of get more within the window of tolerance here. Being silly and playful is part of the healing too. I think I'm healing some things around money and abundance and worth as well. I think that's been a long process since before my diagnosis, and the most recent iterations of this is I am finally discovering what some trades or barters look like. It's something I've talked about and even studied about, and just this past week my acupuncturist brought it up to, hey, I know you really need this healing. I also know you don't really have any money. Can we figure out some sort of a trade? So thinking about what that looks like, talking with my housemate, the person who owns this house, about really similar things, and finding that people are actually really open to that, that there's not as much rigidity in the money mindset as there used to be. Finding hope in that. Hope that things are shifting, things are changing, noticing the shifts, noticing the changes, not just in here, but globally, and being aware and connected to those. Part of the healing is being connected to things that are larger than me, dipping into what is happening out there enough, being in the social media and the news, and then also knowing when to kind of come back here and say, ooh, I don't need all that in my body right now. Yeah, it's not linear. I keep looking, but it's funny, I keep looking back to this notepad here, and all I wrote was healing nonlinear, as if it's going to tell me something. And I think that's it. It's what I keep coming back to, and that's what I'm going to end on here. It's ongoing. It has been really fun. It has been really fun and life altering and life affirming and playful and curious and hopeful, and it's also been terrifying and infuriating and raging, grief filled, grief soaked, like lowest lows, thought I was gonna die. Like, it's been all of that and everything in between and outside of. And as I've said with any of these other videos, this is my experience. I'm an expert in my own story and my own healing, and I can't speak for everyone with CIRS. I'm a white person who comes from some generational wealth, who got hit with this, and I'm feeling the impacts of this diagnosis. And my story is not going to be the same as everybody's, especially with people who have less privilege than I do. And so I want to be very clear that I have access to different types of healing than a lot of other people do. And there are people that have access to way more healing than I do, because that's how privilege and access works. It's not linear, it's unique to the individual. This is my story. So that's my long-winded extended answer to what do I do? What does healing look like for me? Yes. I'm going to end on that note. Thanks for joining. Thanks for watching. See you next time.